Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing a Hallmark Channel movie called The Royal We. Before I get into my review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who likes my videos, subscribes to my channel, leaves me comments. I appreciate you so much. So I want to do the review, and then at the end, I always do kind of my Gen rating. So definitely stick around for that. So I hope you enjoyed the movie. Is another royal movie. They kind of had a royal weekend. They've been having a lot of those movies, but they're all very different, right? They involve the royal family, but they all have a different take on it. So I liked this movie, and I'll explain it a little bit throughout on how it was a little different. But you see at the beginning, Crown Prince Desmond, he has an arranged marriage. And they've only met twice. They basically were destined to be married before they were born, right? But instead of, and you kind of see them getting their picture taken with the engagement ring. And then you see all the headlines. So apparently she elopes with a plumber. So, she kind of, before the marriage, she didn't leave at the wedding. I guess they were still engaged, but, it was broadcast that they were going to bring their families together. And she runs away and marries a plumber and elopes. So the family is upset and betrayed because the marriage, like I said, was to merge the houses. And that creates more tension because they already had tension between the families. And now that, one family is like, you disgraced us by breaking off the engagement and eloping with another person. Now, the younger sister of the lady who eloped, her name is B, and she lives in Boston, and she has been totally away from the public eye. Like, her older sister was the one who was engaged to Desmond and eloped with the plumber, but she's the one who was prim and proper. She was kind of raised to be the next, princess and queen, and the younger sister B, she was a little shy. You find out that there's this picture of her when she was a kid, and she looks kind of awkward in her opinion. I think she looks adorable with her sister, but she didn't like the picture, and she just felt like there was a lot of negativity around it, and she wanted to kind of separate herself from it. So she moved to Boston, went to college, had her own life, kind of, shied away from that. So now that she runs away and elopes with another man, they're like, what are we going to do to join the houses? And then one of the assistants came up with, well, doesn't she have a younger sister, or maybe even Prince Desmond himself? But now they're like, okay, let's go find B, and see if we can propose to her and get the families together. So B, or Beatrice, has a friend named Chloe, best friend since college, and now they have this starting a business together. So he finds Princess B and proposes to her, and she says no. Right? She's like, no, I'm not going to marry you. And then both of the kings have a summit to kind of, reunite to come up with a solution. The summit was a failure. They could not come up with a resolution. So she talks to her sister, and she basically says, I've led a private life. Thanks to you and, mom and dad, you've taken over being in the spotlight, being the princess. So I guess this is my royal duty now to step up. And the sister's like, I'm the happiest I've ever been by, marrying him, marrying the plumber, so to speak. And so B's like, well, I'm glad you're happy, but I need to step up and do my royal duty. So she actually has him reconsider and say, hey, I will marry you. But when he comes over, he's got his staff. He makes like a romantic candlelight dinner out on the balcony, but all of his staff is there and security. So B convinces him to go out for pizza and kind of ditch security, so to speak. So they eat pizza, they go bowling, they talk, talk a little bit about their family. But Edwin, the personal assistant of Desmond, realizes they're gone and kind of reports them missing to the royal family. So, they're all kind of flustered of what happened. So they apologize. And he's like, it can be fixed by announcing your engagement. So she goes to the hotel room to, announce the engagement and have the picture with their flags and everything. And Edwin has like an entire staff, hair, makeup, dress, everything. Just to look the part of a princess. So they take their engagement photo with the engagement ring, same ring he gave his sister, same ring he gave her sister, I'm sorry. And she obviously has to go back to the country and, be asked Chloe to go with her to travel. So she steps out of her apartment and there's cameras everywhere. So I think she's a little flustered by it because she hasn't been around that ever since she was a child. So they finally get to the castle and they're going to do a photo op on the stairs of the gates. And she trips and he catches her. So of course they take a picture of him catching her kind of all around. It's kind of like a dip, right, with the dance. Like she's got her head down and he grabbed her. So even though she feels clumsy that she fell, it was, he caught her and everything was on tape. So she's kind of like, yeah, this is not me, right? This is why I wanted to get away from it. But she can't sleep, so she goes to the kitchen for some tea and she talks to the cook, right? And then Desmond asks for a cup of tea. So she's like, I'll bring it to him. So she brings him the tea and they talk by the fireplace in his room. And again, they have a really good connection, right? So they have a really sweet conversation. So you can kind of tell like it's an arranged marriage. They both are doing their civil duties or their royal duties, but you can kind of see they're getting some chemistry. So, and you're seeing the headlines pop up. So that's another thing that I like. You see all the hashtags and social media. So I thought that was a really cute add to the movie to show, it's in, modern times where you're seeing, like Klutz or, and her social media presence has kind of gone down because nobody really knows who she is. All of a sudden they're like, yeah, you proposed to her sister. She eloped with somebody else. Now you're proposing to the younger sister with the same ring. And, so she actually, when they go to meet for a meeting. She sees a little girl behind the gate and she leans down, takes her flower, talks to the little girl and, talks to everybody. And, then you see the hashtags that they all like her again and she's doing really good. So both of the families come together to talk because right now you have a royal engagement again. And Bee's reunited with their family who she hasn't seen in a long time. And she gets to meet the plumber. His name is Cody and he's super nice. He's also gorgeous, right? He is definitely handsome. So Chloe's like, yeah, I see why why you married him. He's gorgeous. But he's so nice too. I mean, he's just such a nice down to earth person. He just goes up to Chloe and is like, yeah, we're the regular people here. And you can just see right away he's got this charisma. And like I said, he's gorgeous, but he's just so nice and down to earth. So I'm so glad that her older sister, found love. I know everybody's making fun of him, hashtag plumber, but he seems to be a really nice guy. And he said, and she even told B, like, I'm the happiest I've ever been. So, and she's starting to fall for Prince Desmond. So I feel like it's meant to be for B as well. And both families sit on opposite ends of the dinner table, right? Because they're still not happy. So they have some, disagreements there. And then B can't sleep again. So she looks on her phone and she sees all of the social media approval, right? Because now she's winning. She's doing really well. They're starting to like her now. So they talk again. About, like her falling in love and they're really starting to just from that one act of kindness, right? And that in real life, really, it just takes one thing, good or bad, that can flood the internet and make you likable or not likable, right? With one comment, with one act. So, she fell on the steps. Everybody called her a klutz, and she was kind of cold. And now all of a sudden, she's nice to a little girl, takes photos, says hi, and now all of a sudden, everybody loves her. So it's crazy, but that's the way it goes. It can go both ways. So she wants to see the stars. So she actually tells Desmond to meet her, and they get a blanket and they go up on the roof to see the stars. And of course, they fall asleep. So when they come down, right, Edwin, I'm sorry, the assistant does the same thing he did before, like, where are you guys? And he finds them, and they do a luncheon. And Edwin's like, look, there's a luncheon in 3 hours. You have to go get ready. You got hair, makeup. So she leaves, right? Because, like I said, she has to kind of get into this royal duty of always looking the part. And both of the families are there. They're not getting along. So B does what she calls a conflict resolution seminar, which is kind of what she was doing with Chloe back in Boston. So she's like, look, I know how to do this. So she sits down both families, the king and the queens, and she kind of hashes out. She talks, talking about they need to agree on a resolution. When they were kids, they went to the same boarding school, the two kings, and they were friends. So she kind of like a counseling session. She kind of says, let's get to the root of where all this started, and kind of how everything goes through, and kind of works through her strategy, and it works out well. Like, it works out well. So well that the kings are like, yeah, you're right, we need to move forward. So they actually come up with a resolution, right? Remember, the marriage was supposed to bring them together. Now, through her seminar, they really don't need the arranged marriage, because now they've come up with a solution. The queens are nice, they're getting along, and the kings are like, yeah, you're right, we should come together as one. So now they're like, well, the engagement's off. We don't have to force you to marry somebody you barely know, and you don't have to be thrown into the spotlight. You can go back to Boston and do your own thing. But they're kind of conflicted. So she gives them, she gives them the ring back and says they're supposed to act relieved that the engagement is over, since it was an arranged, marriage. But you can tell that they're both falling for each other. So the end of the movie, you see Chloe and B jump on a motorbike, right? And they're rushing through because Desmond's leaving, and they want to kind of, catch him before he leaves. And, with castles, with big mansions, you have these really long driveways. So it's cute. You're seeing them on this little motorbike going through the roads, trying to catch these motor cases, right? All of these cars leaving with Desmond and his security and his family. Desmond stops the car in the middle of the road and basically tells his parents, like, look, I can't do this. Like, I have to do this on my own. I can't leave. So the mama queen gets it. The king's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, I get it. I see it. You're dealing with a broken heart. Let him go. So he's running. So now you've got Chloe and B on a motorbike running to the gate to try to stop Desmond. And you've got Desmond running himself the opposite direction. So you're like, okay, this is cute. They're going to meet in the middle. So he just starts running down the road. He's obviously out of breath running down the road. He flags down a truck. He rides on the bed of the truck. And then he jumps off, and Princess B and Chloe run out of gas in the motorbike. Of course. So B's on foot. So you're like, of course. You have to leave Chloe behind. Something's got to come. So now they're both running in the direction of each other on this really long road. And so I thought that was interesting. It reminds me of so many different movies. It reminds me of the end of Overboard, where they're running towards each other, or swimming towards each other in the water. So, I mean, there's a lot of movies where you kind of see them running towards each other. So they meet at the border at the security gate, and he proposes again, and she says yes, and they kiss, and they, so the end scene is them kissing, and then, you're like, okay, that's the end of the movie. But no, one of my favorite parts in the entire movie is the very end. So the end scene is them standing in a room, and you see like a board, and it's the reception, and they're doing all the seating charts of, deciding where everybody's going to sit basically at the wedding reception. and they're inviting 500 people, right? And B's like, do we even know all these people? And Desmond's like, well, yeah. And he talks about Johnny Payne, and his plus one is Prudence. And then he talks about Henry and how he's bringing his plus one is amusement park Prince from Sweet Pea. And my face just lit up because I was like, oh my goodness, that's so awesome. You can see on my channel I review those two movies. But Johnny Payne is Andrew Walker, love him, from the movie Reluctant Royal. And then they talked about Henry and, his Princess Sweet Pea. And that's from the movie Royal-ish. So I've reviewed both of those movies on my channel. But it's just so sweet that at the end of Royal We, as they're talking about the seating chart, they're talking about, two other Hallmark Royal movies with those characters inviting them to their wedding. So I just loved the way Hallmark did that. I mean, just kudos to Hallmark for just adding in that little tidbit. And I'm not going to tell you, kind of how it went. The stories behind them, because if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movies, watch my reviews of those movies. But it was just sweet because that last scene, he explains it like, well, Johnny Payne and blah 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 blah, and it was a scandal, and Henry and blah, and I was just like, you just summed up the movie in just a couple sentences. But it was just so unexpected, right, to see that. So thank you, Hallmark, for doing that, because it was such a cute tribute to the other two royal movies on your channel. I like that Hallmark's starting to do that, right? At the end of the movie, it's always, oh, they kiss, they live heavily after, or happily ever after. I like it when they do another scene 6 months later, or they show the wedding, or at this point, like they did in this movie, they showed them planning the wedding reception. There's 500 people. They're doing the seating chart. And they talk about the other royals from the other movies on where they're going to sit and who they're going to sit with. Like, are they going to sit with the Americans or, so I just thought that was so brilliant. So kudos for Hallmark. If you're listening, Hallmark, I really enjoy a couple minutes after the kiss and happily ever after, like where they are now, right? Like a year later or 6 months later. I just love to see a little bit of what their life is like after the supposed, kiss and we're going to be together. So I like that. I hope they do that in more movies because it is such a cute little tie into your own channel, Hallmark. But for me, I wasn't expecting it, and I just loved it because I watched those movies first. So I guess if you watch this movie first, it really wouldn't make sense to you. But since I already watched The Reluctant Royal and Royal-ish, I picked up on it instantly. So definitely great. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, to be honest. So for this movie, my gen rating, how I do my gen rating is I say what I love about the movie, what I didn't like about the movie. Was it believable? The actors, the stories, did I really believe, that she was a royal? Did I really believe that? And the whole storyline. And then the overall the feels of the movie, how it made me feel after. So I did like a lot of things about this movie. I liked that the younger sister felt, her older sister was the prettier one. They were, kind of grooming her to take over the crown. And she was kind of the younger sister who felt inadequate and always kind of, that's my pretty sister. So I felt like that was kind of relatable because royalty or not, we all feel that way sometimes in our families. And I liked how they had the little hashtags flashing up with social media because I feel like in this day and age, that's kind of what happens. You see a scene or you hear a speech from somebody, a politician, royalty, and you automatically start doing all these hashtags. So I thought I liked that. That was kind of, modern that I liked in the show. And I did believe the characters, I thought the acting was good. I liked how they had a lot of kind of tender, sweet moments talking about their childhood. So I believe the characters. I thought the overall feels of the movie was great. You know, like I said, I love how at the end they tied in with the royals from the other royal movies. So all in all, I didn't know a lot of the actors and actresses in this movie, but overall, I would say it was really a great movie. If you have an opportunity to watch it, you know, there's a lot of cute little scenes that I left out, obviously, in my review. But I really thought they portrayed it well. So, especially for that last scene, because like I say, that's probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. And again, I want to encourage Hallmark to give us a scene or two after they end it because I'm kind of over the whole kiss happily ever after. Let's see a scene or two after. And one of the other royal movies did that too. And you probably heard in my review how I liked that. So, you know, you have your happily ever after, but give us a year later or 6 months later, you know, let us see what's happening. So, them planning the seating chart, I don't think I've ever seen in a Hallmark movie, which is realistic because when you plan a wedding, you do have to have a seating chart. You have to decide who sits with who and who gets along with who and separate these people, or you know, this cousin doesn't talk to this cousin. So to me that was realistic. So I loved seeing that as part of the movie because I feel like we all have gone through that if we've had to plan a wedding reception. So with that being said, for this movie, my gen rating is 5 gold crowns. I thought it was great the way they ended it that way, and just how I felt like it was realistic, even though it was the royal family. But I loved how, you know, the older sister was like, look, I know I eloped and I married somebody who, you know, was a commoner since he was a plumber. But he was such a great fit for her. And I really liked that too. Like, hey, she didn't regret it. She's happy. Her parents are happy. The king and queen are there with her. They're supporting Bee marrying Prince Desmond. So I like that. I like that it kind of brought a little bit of realistic to it amidst the royal part, but just like the family aspect of it. You know, she kind of did something that disappointed her family, but they love her because you and your family, you still love them and support them. And I loved that. So definitely a different take on that. So again, my gen rating for this movie is 5 gold crowns. I hope you enjoyed my review, my rating. If you get an opportunity to watch the movie, definitely watch it. It's very cute and it has a great ending. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.